Is technology at your work distracting you from actual work? Do you spend too much time troubleshooting PC or internet issues? IT Enabled can help. Our team of IT specialists can help you tackle your technology troubles and get you focused on growing your business in no time. Call to schedule your technology consultation. 936-225-3329. IT Enabled. We're here to help.
Hi, I'm Tara Watson-Watkins, President and CEO of the Lufkin Angelina County Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Connect, connecting business to community. I'm here today with my co-host Blake Polino with BP Media Group.
So in this week's episode, we interview Lonnie Hunt, who is the Executive Director of Detcog, and it blew our minds how expansive this organization is and how much this organization does in our region across our county and 11 other counties in this area. So let's jump into this episode now.
Well, we're thrilled to have Lonnie Hunt with us today. Lonnie is the Executive Director of Detcog, which is DP's Texas Council of Governments. And Lonnie, why don't you give everybody a background on you, how you got to Detcog. Let's do that first before we get into the nitty-gritty.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. People who know me know I like to talk, so I'll apologize for that in advance. Yeah. But, you can just sort of pull that cord.
This is a talking show. You're good.
And I'll take off. Well, I'm from Deep East, Texas. I grew up in Corrigan, Texas, just a few miles down the road. And for about the last 45 years or so, I've called Crockett my home. I currently stay in Lufkin more than I stay in Crockett because of my job with Detcog. But even for 5 years, I worked in Austin with the Texas Association of Counties. But all that time, I've maintained my residence here. And Deep East, Texas has been and always will be home. Grew up in the pine trees. My dad worked at the sawmill. It's just it's deep in my roots, and this is where I want to be. And I was in the radio business for a number of years, and then was fortunate a few years ago to be elected county judge of Houston County, and that sort of helped me, move into a different career. I'd been on the school board years earlier and things like the Chamber of Commerce and what have you, but as far as it really kind of turned up my public service, and I served for county judge for, I was elected a couple of terms, but I actually left early. I like to tell folks I quit them, they didn't quit me. But I was offered this opportunity to go to Austin and work with the Association of Counties, which was a great job because over a 4-year period, I got to literally go out and visit every single county in Texas, which was a great experience in many, many ways. And then the opportunity at Detcog came along, and I had been, when I was county judge, actually when I left to go to Austin, I was serving as the president of the board of Detcog. So I was very familiar with the way the organization worked, and of course knew virtually all the people around the region that were involved in it, and it just seemed like a good fit, and here I am. Been about almost 5 years now as the executive director, and loving it.
So for those that are not familiar with Detcog, why don't you tell them what it is, what you do? There's a lot. I was going to say there's a lot. So
I've made notes.
What role does it play for our community? How about that?
Let me just start by saying it from a legal standpoint. And by the way, if I rock too much, let me know because I'm a rocker.
Oh, no, you're totally fine. Before you do that, what is Detcog? What does it stand for?
Detcog is Deep East Texas Council of Governments, and then there's a little more on our official name, and Economic Development District.
Wow, it's probably good that they left that off. That'd have been a real mouthful.
Detcog is a catchy acronym that people can remember, and as a result, most people have heard of Detcog, but
they don't know what you do.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell us what it is.
We are, legally speaking, we're a political subdivision of the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. We're not your typical government agency in that we're not another layer of government. We're an association of the local governments. And so we exist for the benefit of our cities and counties and schools and river authorities and other local governments within the region. Membership is voluntary, so none of them have to be members. We're fortunate that all of our counties and the vast majority of our cities, over 40, are members of Detcog, and same with our school districts and other special districts. But they are part of Detcog because they see the value in working together with their neighbors through Detcog. So as far as we're different things to different people, because we have so many different programs going on. We are an organization that enables services to be provided that otherwise wouldn't be feasible. For example, we run a large housing voucher program. We don't own any houses or apartments or property, but we have about 1,700 families around the region, and about half of them are here in Angelina County that receive assistance to help them afford decent housing. We make payments directly to landlords, but we're not a part of we qualify tenants for the program, we qualify properties for the program, and then the tenants and landlords get together just like they normally would with a contract. And once we see all that, we provide the funding directly to the landlord each month. But so for a lot of people, we're the housing program.
Sure.
For other people, we're the 911 program because we're in charge of administering the emergency 911 communications network.
Yeah, I think that the first time I ever heard you say that, I was just shocked because I had absolutely no clue that Detcog was over that.
And you can imagine if 12 different counties had to have 12 different 911 networks, the coordination would be a nightmare. As it is, there are 24 regions in the state, and then there are some 911 districts that have been established in larger areas where they can support their own 911 district. But it allows for a more effective job and less duplication of service, and certainly more efficient. We fund senior citizen centers and home delivered meals around our region. The services are delivered by local organizations, but the state of Texas would have a difficult time dealing directly with 12 counties and 40 plus cities for all these programs. So it's a lot more efficient for them to utilize regional councils such as ourselves to bring the local agencies together and deliver these services. And so to some people, we're the aging program. To others, we're a youth counseling program because we operate a program called FAYS, which is Family and Youth Success Program that helps at-risk youth, keep them in school, works with families to keep family units together so that it's funded by the Department of Family and Protective Services, but the whole idea is early intervention and prevention so these families and youth don't end up in the CPS program, which sometimes has to break families apart. And so we're all about keeping families together. And as a result, we're a lot of different things to different people. But I guess if I was going to summarize it, I'd just say that we exist to make life better for the people of Deep East Texas.
That's exactly right.
Wow, that's a lot going on there. A whole lot of stuff. How is this organization funded? Can you tell us a little bit about how that process works?
Yes, almost all by grants or contracts with the state or federal government. We have this year our budget is about $22.8 million, and of that we will collect, if we collect every penny, and we probably will, we'll collect about $83,000 in dues from our members. Now that's mostly our local governments, but we're fortunate we also have businesses, around the region and industry that support us as sustaining members. But our membership dues take in about $83,000. The rest of it comes from various services that we perform with state contracts and grants and federal contracts and grants. So the way I like to explain it to folks is we collect $83,000 from our members, and we leverage that into almost $23 million in services for our region.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Now, you said this year would be close to $23 million. Is that a typical number?
That's pretty typical. Our funding over the years has been pretty stable. Now, in some years, it's grown considerably because we've had natural disasters like hurricanes.
Sure.
And every one of those events is different. After Hurricane Ike, for example, a significant amount of the recovery funding flowed through Detcog. The state has changed a lot of things in the way they respond, and they've staffed up the General Land Office with a division that now does a lot of the things that the COGs used to be asked to do, which we're thrilled about that. We still support them in a lot of ways. But there have been times in the past where we have about 60 employees now. There have been times we've had over 100 employees, but almost half of them were working on some disaster recovery project. So that can cause it to fluctuate. But about $20 million base program of work is where we've been for the last several years. It grows a little bit every year, but not that much.
Sure. Well, you work with so many counties. I mean, a term that is used quite often that I don't think a lot of people really understand is regionalism. So let's talk about that and how that really relates to all that you do.
That is a great question. And, I debate amongst myself whether I like that term regionalism or not. I certainly like regional cooperation.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes people think of regionalism as meaning this is some other layer of government bureaucracy, and that's not what it is. In Texas, there's no such thing as a regional government. We are an association of local governments. So regionalism is, we don't have any taxing authority. We don't have any authority to make any rules or regulations or laws or ordinances. So we're not big brother government.
Sure.
We really exist. I like to tell people we don't run the cities and counties, they run us. We exist for their benefit. Regionalism really at the heart is just a recognition that we're all in this thing together. And what's good for our neighbors is good for us and vice versa. And I'll use Lufkin and Angelina County as an example because this is the hub of our region. It's our population hub. It's generally our geographic center. It's our commercial hub. In many respects, our medical hub. It's important to all of the residents of Deep East Texas that Lufkin, Angelina County be a strong, vibrant hub. It's equally important to Lufkin that the rest of the region be a strong, vibrant region because if you went into your typical store here in Lufkin or maybe the hospital or medical facilities, you would probably find at any given time they are servicing more customers from outside Lufkin because this is the hub. Mm-hmm. And so the population of Lufkin might be the same, but without the support and the commerce that comes from other parts of the region, the business community would certainly not look the same. And I've had a lot of friends that come through Lufkin, and they're amazed at all the business that is here, the retail business, that is typically not found in a town this size. And it's because that this is a regional hub, and we do have commerce. I like to say it's a two-way street, and the traffic flows both ways, but visionary leaders see this. And we're fortunate that 55 years ago when Detcog was organized, we had visionary leaders like Arthur Temple, Charlie Wilson. Charlie was our first Detcog board president. He was serving in the state senate at the time. Wow. And I know Arthur Temple was behind the scenes helping bring people together to make this happen. Peyton Walters, who at the time was the judge in Polk County and later worked for the congressman. Mm-hmm. These visionary leaders back in the early days saw the benefit of creating this vehicle, which is now Detcog, that allows regional collaboration for the benefit of everybody. Yeah. And I think it's as important or more so now than it was back in the 1960s when it started. Yeah. And I think with our changing world and, everything that's just advancing at an unbelievable pace, I think it's going to be just more and more critical in the future.
That's right.
Yeah. And you talk about those business efforts and what would extend that acronym to talk about business development and the economy. How specifically do those programs work? How does it impact our local economy? And obviously it brings things together in that regional sense that you just talked about, but kind of elaborate on that a little bit. How does that specifically work?
One thing is, before we were a council of governments, the very first thing we was a federal economic development district. We were the Deep East Texas Economic Development District.
Interesting.
That's what they organized back in November of 1966. And then a year or two later, there were state statutes that were added which allowed for these regional planning commissions, which is what we are as a cog for the state of Texas. And so Detcog morphed from just a federal economic development district to also become a state planning commission, or a COG,
Interesting.
Council of Governments. And but our original partner in this effort of economic development is an agency of the U.S. Department of Commerce. It was created when LBJ was president, and that was in the mid-'60s, which is, we are a direct response to the legislation that created the U.S. Economic Development Administration, and allowed for these economic development districts to be formed. And so we still have a strong relationship with EDA. One of the things that we do as part of that process, we're required to do every 5 years, is develop what we call the CEDS. It's the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for our region. This takes stock of what we have, where we are, what our needs are. It addresses strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, gives us goals moving forward. It also incorporates a resiliency strategy, because more and more now we're seeing the impact of disasters. Used to be hurricanes. Now it's pandemics and ice storms and hurricanes and tornadoes and other things.
Getting worse.
Exactly. And so there's a big emphasis now on becoming more resilient, putting things into place so that the next time one of these major disasters occurs, we won't be impacted quite so severely, and we will be able to recover more quickly and more effectively. So the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or CEDS, is one of the things we do that incorporates our entire 12-county region. EDA provides a significant amount of grant funds. Most of them are in competitive grant programs. And typically, when a city or county has a project that qualifies for an EDA grant, the first thing the EDA looks at is this CEDS. Is this meeting a need that has been identified by the region as a need that needs to be addressed? And so if it is, then that's step one. Most of these EDA grants are available to cities and counties and COGs. We have benefited ourselves from our new building in Lufkin was funded partially by an EDA grant that really got us started. But things like the Lufkin Business Park, we received, we helped the city of Lufkin secure an EDA grant a few years ago for $4 million that funded the Lufkin Business Park out on Highway 103. The Polk County Commerce Center in Livingston, which is the Angelina College Center there and a center of various activities. We were able to help Polk County get a $4 million grant a few years ago to help fund that. We've been able to help the city of St. Augustine get about $1 million grant for water and sewer infrastructure.
That's great.
Currently, we have 3, in addition to the grants that we're coming to Detcog, we have 3 communities in our region that we are currently managing EDA grants for. One is Newton County, which is a road project. One is San Jacinto County, which is a building project. And then the city of Crockett has recently been awarded a grant for infrastructure improvements that will help their economic industrial park. So we help these local governments apply for and receive the grants, and then if they want us to, we will manage the grant process for them. So that's another thing that is a great benefit for economic development. I mentioned disaster recovery because, after a hurricane or some other natural disaster hits, the federal government traditionally allocates a significant amount of funding to help in the recovery of that. Now, a lot of that funding is for, especially after things like hurricanes, a lot of that funding is for infrastructure. but we look for opportunities to access whatever those funds are available to us to help in economic development. And a good example of that is after Hurricane Ike, we received funding, disaster recovery funding, and set up a forgivable loan program. It was designed so that companies around the region, if they met certain benchmarks of creating new jobs and a certain percentage of those jobs being for low to moderate income families, we would forgive the loan over a 2-year period. And that's been a very successful program. We had businesses here in Lufkin that expanded, like Atkinson Candy. What we provided was really just a portion of their investment, but we helped with their expansion. Home Smokehouse is another one, and a lot of other companies throughout the region. So we look for opportunities to think outside the box. Even though that's a disaster recovery program, it benefits our economic development. And then to some degree, everything we do, because anything we do that makes our region a better place is going to contribute to our economy.
Sure.
I mentioned this housing program. It is designed to support decent housing. Mm-hmm. But a side benefit of it is we pay out about $1 million a month or $12 million a year to property owners in our region. And again, about half those are in Angelina County for rental payments under that housing program. So that's a huge shot in the arm to our local economy, even though it's not identified as an economic development program.
Wow.
That is a lot.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
The first time I heard him speak at First Friday several years ago, when we had you come, I was just in awe of all that y'all do at Detcog, and I had no clue. Being new to the chamber world, I had seen you from afar and had known you from afar, but had never had the opportunity to work with you, and I was just amazed at all that Detcog does.
It's hard to have an elevator speech for this.
Yeah,
it really is.
It really is.
There's not a 3-minute speech.
It's really difficult. So opportunities like this, I love to be
That's
able
right.
to just sit.
Yeah.
And, you'll have to shut me up at some point.
No.
These things are to be able to educate the community and to be able to give nuggets of information that people can take, and then to be able to promote Detcog and for what they do. You said a minute ago, and I'd like for you to talk about the new building. About a year ago, y'all had an opportunity to move to Lufkin, and I know that was helpful with Lufkin being the center of the hub. Tell us about your new facility and really how that's changed impact of work.
It's awesome. It's an awesome example, I think, of public-private partnerships, of people bringing resources together. We started with a $1 million grant from the EDA, and it was going to be to build a regional emergency operations center, which was proposed to be built here in Lufkin. That was actually awarded before I came to Detcog, but it had not been implemented, it had not been built. And when I came in and started looking around at some of our needs, we had a need for a new facility. Our facility in Jasper was a fine building. It really wasn't large enough to accommodate all our programs, so we had programs scattered around in different locations, some here in Lufkin, most in Jasper, and a few other places. But it also was not centrally located in the region. Our goal is to see that those folks in Cold Spring, Texas, or Tenaha, Texas, or Grapeland, Texas, Bon Weir, wherever they are in this large region of ours, which is we're larger than 6 entire states geographically. So our goal is to see that those folks in these outlying areas get the same level of service as people who live within a few blocks of our building. That's a challenge, but it's certainly easier to do if you're in a central location, if you're in the hub of the region. So it's helped us from that regard. But we were able to, when we saw this opportunity, we reached out to the Temple Foundation, which has been a great partner for Detcog, and they saw the possibilities, I think, and they gave us another $1 million to go with the EDA funding, and then we got some funding also from the Kurth Foundation, and the city of Lufkin stepped up big time with the Lufkin Economic Development Corporation. They provided us with a combination of grant and loan money. So altogether, we were able to take that original $1 million EDA grant, and we ended up with about a $3 million facility, which is basically paid for. There's a very small amount at the bank, but it's very small, less than $200,000. So we're able to leverage this funding for these different resources. It's allowed us to become much more efficient because we do have every program under one roof.
Right.
We can give better service because there are, even though we have a housing program and an aging program and a youth counseling program and public safety programs and 911, there are many opportunities for these things to work across program lines. That's easier to do if we have them all housed under one roof. One good example of that was after that devastating tornado in Alaska a year and a half ago. We were able to send a team down there. It was composed of our housing people because we were able to open up our housing waiting list specifically for victims of that tornado that needed immediate housing. We sent our area agency on aging and the resources they have that were able to help anyone age 55, I believe it was 50 or 55 and older, because a lot of those victims were that. So we had additional instant help for some of those folks. We had our public safety folks going because they could help in the immediate aftermath of managing the situation and just being a support network for the authorities in Polk County. So 3 different programs rolled up their sleeves together and marched together to help those folks. And that's just one example of what can be done when you work across these program lines instead of having siloed programs that we're doing our thing here and we're doing our thing here. And we're getting better at that, and we're working to be as effective as that as we can possibly be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well,
That's
we're glad
really
to have
interesting.
you.
Yeah.
We also have some new capabilities in our building. One thing is we were able to build in new technology. We needed a total overhaul of our servers, of our entire IT system.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to build that in. That would have been significant for us in normal times.
Mm-hmm.
But about 3 months after we moved into this new building, this thing called COVID-19 happened.
Right.
And
That accelerated that process, huh?
we were forced to have people work remotely. Now, we're all working in the building now, but for a period of a few months there, we've kept a small core of people in the building, but probably 3/4 of our people worked remotely for several months. And I don't think we could have pulled that off with the old technology we had.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that we had equipped this new facility with all new technology enabled us to do that and do it a lot better. I mentioned that the original grant was to develop a regional emergency operations center. That is inside our building. We didn't have that previously. We've been in this building a little over a year now. We've already had to activate that regional EOC twice.
Right.
Last fall for Hurricane Laura, and then more recently during the winter storms. And when we activate the EOC, we're there to support, but it's the state of Texas, it's the Texas Division of Emergency Management moving their disaster center into our building and operating around the clock with DPS and various other state agencies. And so that's already proven to be a huge benefit. Another new feature we have, talking about 911, in the new building, we have built a dispatch center. Now, it's in terminology of the program, it's called a PSAP, which is a public safety answering point. We have 15 PSAPs around the region. They're typically in sheriff's offices or public safety offices around the region, police departments, where they take the 911 calls that are incoming. We now have a backup PSAP. We can use it to train dispatchers throughout the region. We can use it to go live. If, for example, let's say that there's some problem in Shelby County's 911 system, someone cuts a cable somewhere and the system goes down, we can dispatch their calls out of our center. So it gives us a lot of backup capability that we just didn't have in the past.
That's nice. I think so many people learned that their systems either were going to work
You're right.
or they needed an upgrade during COVID.
Yeah.
So you're lucky that you had just gone through that.
We really were. And just having a nice new building that was custom designed for us made it a lot easier to keep the
Imagine.
building sanitized,
Yeah.
as opposed to a 20-year-old building. It newer is just easier to keep up, and so we've been very blessed in that regard.
I think we all found out about a lot of infrastructure problems here recently that needed to be corrected. And a big part of that, there's a lot of legislation going through right now talking about expanding broadband service, in our area and in the region that you all manage. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement in that? And if anybody's kept any tabs on the news, so we record these a little bit in advance. So this may be a little dated by the time you're hearing this, but tell us a little bit about how that broadband rollout is going.
Well, good news. There's been a lot of progress on broadband. Now, there is still a lot of work to be done. I mean, the fact is, Deep East Texas is one of the most underserved regions in the nation in terms of broadband. And some people still, what is broadband? Broadband is internet service. But broadband indicates a more robust internet service, higher speeds, more capability, so that you can take full advantage of what the internet can do for you and be equipped to move into the future technologies they're still waiting to be developed. But we looked around, we've known for years we have this problem. Other people in cities and suburban areas have good internet, and we don't. Now, Lufkin, Nacogdoches, the larger cities, they're much, much better off than our smaller cities and our rural areas. But too many parts of the Detcog region either do not have access to internet at all, or it's not a high enough quality and fast enough speed to really be usable for them. And that's a problem. We've known it's a problem for a long time. About 3 years ago, I don't know who it was that the light bulb went off in first, but we finally kind of woke up one day and said, it doesn't look like anybody else is going to ride in here on a white horse and solve this problem for us. Mm-hmm. So maybe we ought to be seeing what we can do. So our board of directors approved a regional feasibility study and market analysis. I think we already knew what the problem was, but we had to prove that up.
Right.
We had to have documentation. You can't just go asking for money to fix a problem because we know there's a problem and we know we need money and we got to do something. Mm-hmm. So this feasibility study, it told us a lot of what we already knew, but it provided documentation for that. It told us some things we didn't know. For one thing, that the people who do have good internet in our region, on average, are paying 4 times more for it for the same type of service than our folks in the big cities, and that's not fair.
No.
It told us that, yes, you can do something about this problem, but there are areas of our region that are never going to be economically feasible to serve on their own. And so the only way you're going to be able to ensure that everybody in this region gets service, you're going to have to leverage the larger population of the whole region. And then you can create a network where you can ensure service to everyone without the cherry picking that goes on. And when I say cherry picking, I'm not being critical of the existing internet providers. Nobody is a bigger supporter of the American free enterprise system than I am. Mm-hmm. I'm a red-blooded American. That's what it's all about. It's what built this great country. But the reality is, for-profit companies are never going to be able to make a profit serving a significant number of people in our region. So we've got to figure out other ways to get it done. Mm-hmm. And that means a nonprofit or a cooperative way, or maybe bringing a lot of different partners together. We went into this with no preconceived notion. Just the idea that it's got to be done. It's got to include everybody. It's got to be reliable and redundant and affordable. Because even if internet's out there available and it's not affordable, many of our folks, we live in a region where people couldn't afford it.
Right.
As things have progressed, it turns out we're a little more involved than we really had envisioned or wanted to be from the start. But again, I think our position is we're willing to do as much or as little as it takes. If we could just pull someone else in here to get this done, right, we'd love to do that. We have found a grant opportunity that we are eligible for, so we've applied for it.
Right.
Now, to get that grant, we had to do some engineering work in addition to this feasibility study. You can't just walk in with a plan or with an idea, you got to have a plan. The plan's got to be developed by an engineer, stamped and certified by an engineer, so we know it's a legitimate, solid plan with legitimate cost estimates. We were able to get funding from the EDA and the Temple Foundation to combine to give us the money to hire an engineering firm to do this network design. And I might interject here. We have tried to do this right from the start.
Sure.
The company we chose to do the feasibility study was Ericsson. They are a worldwide leader in technology. They did a tremendous job. There are other companies that could have done an equally good job, but in addition to delivering a product that was helpful to us, they helped open doors just with the Ericsson name, with other people who can help us.
Great.
The company that's doing our engineering is Magellan Advisors. They are one of, in my opinion, I'll have to say probably the leading broadband development company in the nation. The resources they bring to the table are just incredible. And so we're blessed to be able to work with some of the top-notch talent out there in the country and the world to help us solve this problem. And I think a lot of them are really interested in helping us because they see this as a rural region. They see a rural problem all across America, and if it can be fixed in deep East Texas, it can be fixed anywhere. There are 24 regions in the state of Texas. 20 of them are urban areas surrounded by rural counties. Only 4 of us are totally rural regions. So we're one of those that feels the impact of this more significantly than others. And maybe that's why we jumped on it before other people did. But we've been working on this 3 years. With the pandemic last year, there's been a tremendous amount of new emphasis, and everybody's realized we got to do something about this. Fortunately, we're ahead of the curve on that because we'd already had 2 years invested in this before the pandemic hit. That has allowed us to make a couple of large grant applications. These are through the Texas General Land Office. It's disaster mitigation funding designed to help you become more resilient, mitigate the impact of future disasters, but it's based on past disasters that have occurred. One of them is Hurricane Harvey. So we've got a $100 million application in the Hurricane Harvey competition that would build a phase 1 of a regional broadband network in all 12 counties. It would put in more than 600 miles of fiber through all of our counties.
That's great.
It would deliver service to about 58% of the homes. And of course, our goal is 100%.
Sure.
But you got to start somewhere.
Take 58.
Well,
Yeah.
I like to say how are we going to do this? Well, you eat this elephant one bite at a time.
That's
But
right.
if we can get this grant, we can take out more than half the elephant in the first bite. So and it gives us this backbone of fiber
That's right.
that gives us the platform to expand. Now, in addition to that, there was a separate grant competition for 2016 flooding. And Newton County, one of our counties, was one of the most impacted counties in Texas in the 2016 flooding. So that gave us an opportunity to develop a second application. And that's actually, I might say that's the first application. It's the first one that's been awarded. But so we have a separate application under this 2016 program for the northern part of Newton County. The proposals are virtually identical, except one serves northern Newton County and the other serves throughout a 12-county region. We have been awarded the $9 million grant for northern Newton County.
That's great.
We're anxious to get started. It's still in the paperwork stage. It's been announced, and we're just waiting for a contract to get signed so that we can get rolling with that. We think within a few weeks we will know whether or not we're going to get the big grant. We know we have a strong application, but at the same time, there's $1 billion available in that grant fund. There are about 240 applications from other people, and there's about $6 billion in requests. So a lot of people are not going to get the money, and we're hopeful, we're praying, we're doing everything we know to do, but we're just sort of in a wait and see mode now. If we don't get this grant, there will be another opportunity and another round of funding probably later this year or next year. We would probably just have to come back and relook at everything because it wouldn't make sense just to submit the exact same application that didn't quite make the cut in round one. We would have to look for ways to, and that might include
Modify.
scaling down our project a little to
57%.
yeah. So, just anything we can do we'll learn more.
Right.
If we don't get funded, we will learn more from the process to show us how we might increase our score.
Yeah.
Right.
Another great thing about this particular grant program, it is targeted toward low to moderate income households. And so we started out thinking, well, if we want to serve the whole region, we're going to have to build a hub of a network serving the larger anchor institutions, get that off the ground, and then reach out. Well, with this grant opportunity, it changed our thinking. We are now, with our proposed, if we get this grant, we will start with low-income households all through our 12-county region and provide service to them at no upfront cost. So it targets the people who arguably need it the worst and can afford it the least. But it still allows everyone to be served. So I'm just so excited about it. I'll tell you that 3 years ago, I was terrified of this whole broadband, because this is something much bigger than Detcog has ever even thought about undertaking.
Yeah,
It's a big undertaking, for sure.
And I want to tell you that I stay in touch with people all over the country. I've yet to find another region like ours in the nation that is approaching this like we are, that says we have to have a plan that includes everybody in the region. We can't just settle for getting better service and extending it into some more places. We got to get a plan that includes everybody. I hope and pray that the rest of the country will end up with that same attitude, because that's what it's going to take for rural America. And the benefit of that is the feasibility study we had done says if we can do this in our region, we can create 10,000 new jobs over the next 10 years. That is a game changer for a region that has historically been way behind the state and the federal statistics on income, poverty, health outcomes, educational attainment. All these things are interconnected and related. It all comes down to jobs. And if we can create good new jobs to support families in our region, every aspect of life will improve.
That's right.
So we're determined. We're not going to quit. We're going to be that bulldog that stays after it until the job is done. We don't have to be the one doing it. We don't want to be in the internet business. And with this grant that we've already gotten and the one that we're trying to get, we will build the infrastructure, but then we'll be looking for other partners, other experienced companies that know what they're doing to come and operate this system and deliver the service. We don't intend to do, we're not going to be an internet service provider. We're just trying to be the spark plug that makes it happen.
Well, we appreciate all that you do for our region and all that you do for the citizens that live here and help make Deep East Texas a better place to live, work, and play. So thank you.
Well,
very,
I would be
very much.
remiss if I didn't say I have a wonderful team of people, and I do. There is all these different programs are led by program directors. Most of them have a lot of experience. They do a great job. I've threatened them all on a daily basis. Nobody leaves this place till I leave. Nobody retires till I get ready to retire. But they do a great job, and they've got great staffs working under them. And that allows me, if I was having to be too engaged in the day-to-day operations of all of our programs, that's the core of Detcog, they're all terribly important.
Right.
But if I was having to spend too much time in those, I wouldn't have had the time to devote to this broadband initiative. And, it takes time. It takes time to get things off the ground. So to my Detcog program directors and all the staff, thank you for everything that you do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I mean, this has been really eye-opening. It's great to see that we have an agency like yours that's supporting us here in this region. We thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and opening our eyes to everything that you guys do. It's really been amazing, everything that you're involved in. And we want to thank you so much for listening to the podcast this week. We appreciate you tuning in every week. And if you want to watch the video version of this podcast, it is available on the Chamber YouTube channel, as well as the Chamber Facebook page. And we will see you next week.